So, hello everyone. I am glad to have you all today with us in our last session uh, from EHUB Talks in 2020. It was a long year. So, my name is Lima Othman. I'm the volunteer event manager in Architect Hub Qatar. I'm happy today to introduce our last talk, which is called Architecture Trends 2021 after 2020. First, let me introduce our esteemed panel for guests for today. Uh, we have with us, glad to have with us Roberto Molinos. Roberto is the CEO of Modelicom and an expert in digital transformation in the AEC industry. Roberto and his team have been a great support to the Architect Hub from the early starting. So happy to have you with us today. Roberto will be talking about the entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial innovation in the practice of architecture for 2021, specifically about the importance of thinking, making mistakes, having skin in the game, and being moderately optimistic. Then we have Professor Cas Oosterhuis. Professor Cas is an architect, educator, writer, innovator, and he's the owner of ONL Architecture Studio in Hungary. Happy to have you with us, Professor. Dr. Kass has suggested a very interesting talk titled The Chinese Patient Promising to Open Up a New Avenue for the Thoughts as we begin 2021. Navigating 2021 and the coming years in terms of the elementary needs like food, clothing, mobility, and housing. Also, we are happy to have with us Randa Ahmed-Hassan. Randa is a delivery project manager in London, UK. She is an experienced project manager currently working in UK in water industry with a history of delivering projects in challenging and fast-moving environment. Randa will share her insights, how the construction business maneuvered the impact to sustain business as usual as much as possible during 2020 and lesson learned for 2021. Thank you, Randa, for being with us today. Also, we have Lubnal Afghazi. She's the ex-country manager, DMG Events Doha, and she was in charge of the Index and Big Five exhibitions. She will be talking about architectural events outlook for 2021 and sharing her insights like lessons learned for 2020, social distancing and events, 2021 expectation and realities. Thank you for joining us today, Lubna. It was planned that Kinza Alwi will be with us today, but unfortunately, as she's a student in architecture, and we know the last minute work, so she was incapable to be with us today. But Kinza was with us during the full year, and she's in France. We hope that we'll meet again. Before starting, let me just give you the few guidelines to all the attendees. All the attendees should be muted during the presentation of our panel. If you have any question, just keep it in the end and we'll give you the speech. So normally we'll start with Roberto. So Roberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure being here. And actually, I want to reinforce that being presented next to Professor Kass is always a pleasure. He's been a reference for me since I was at the university. So it's kind of a dream come true. I don't know if I have some notes, just a couple of slides just to help me structure my little presentation. I'm not going to be taking a lot of your time because I just want to make sure we have time to discuss and to debate around everything that's going to be presented. So I'm going to share my screen very briefly, just to make sure we have this right. So I'm just I mean, when Omima approached me and asked me, and I was so delighted to take part in this chat, we agreed upon sharing things we have learned this year, probably in a way to contribute to next year or to the years to come with the experiences of this incredible, so strange year we just had, right? So I want to share with you that I started this year. I run a company that is 40 people large. We have offices in Madrid, Barcelona. We have a lot of interests in Qatar, also in the Middle East, and we just recently opened an office in London. And when I started the year, I worked a lot on having a plan for this very special year, where we were actually going to transition from a type of business towards more advisory and consultancy services. And as you can imagine, every plan that I had drafted in the beginning of the year, around January and February, suddenly was shattered by this pandemic. So I realized that this was actually something that will happen to us again in the future. So I realized that the best plan is actually not needing a plan, right? So actually having a plan might be a good thing for you, but I realized that I had to shape my company, and I had to shape my practice and my business in a way that we were not to need a plan again, right? In the future, right? So we resorted to actually shape ourselves in a way that would make that possible. So in a way that we will actually benefit from uncertainty, benefit from actually being together in the same space, but equally being able to work remotely, be able to engage with clients across the globe, regardless of our ability to fly and meet them in person. The ability, we resorted to have the ability to use our knowledge to the maximum extent, even if we were not in the same office, even if we were not working together, even if we were actually working in new markets. So we removed, or we just discarded our initial plan for the year, and we created a series of attributes that we wanted to have, that we would call invaluable attributes, something that we know will be great to have always. So that way, by acquiring those attributes, by developing them, we knew that if we didn't have a plan, or the plan was eventually rendered useless because of the changes in the world, or because of the changes in our business, we would still be okay. So that would be my first learning or takeaway from this year, is that we will never do a yearly plan again, right? The plan is actually going to be not having a plan anymore, and shaping ourselves in a way that we don't need. And then if we can see some certainty in the future, and we can make large scale or long shot, like long-term decisions, then better for us. But at least we are sure we will be on the safe side. Actually, then we also confirmed that the importance of tinkering and the importance of actually being innovative, at least moderately innovative, in the sense that testing new things, doing little developments, trying to use projects as excuse for introducing small or mid-sized innovations in our practice, in the way we engage with clients, in the way we develop projects. We work in projects across the whole world. We work in stadium, airports, offices. We're working on modular housing and modular construction. And we have tons of opportunities as architects and engineers to innovate in the way we develop these projects. So we feel that a characteristic of Modelica, which is we've always tried to be very innovative in the way we approach developing and delivering projects. It proved really good. I mean, we've never been tremendously successful in those innovations, but it made us be stay relevant to our clients, to our projects. So it was very important for us to remain testing new things. Actually, that I think the word tinkering is very descriptive in this term. And also, you have to acknowledge the value or the role of luck, right? There are many things that you can have under control, but there are also many other things that you don't know, right? So it is important to understand that you have to provide the right the right context and the right circumstances, so luck can work in favor of what you're doing, and not thinking that you have everything under control, not being what you would call so cynical to think that everything, that you can do everything, you can control everything. So we recognize the role of luck in this year, where we had a very small downturn due to the pandemic. Very few of our projects actually were shut down or postponed. So we think we have. I cannot say that we had everything in control. What I say is that we have been very lucky with this. So recognizing the role of luck is very important for us. It's going to be very important for us in the future. Also, learning from our mistakes. Mistakes are great stressors of the way of a company like an architectural office. Understanding where you went wrong is actually much more important than getting things right for many of the things that we do. Of course, you have to try and limit the risks and the impact of your mistakes, but more importantly, you need to be able to learn from them. This seems like very obvious, but most organizations are not ready as an organization to learn from their mistakes. You need to have a system, you need to have a culture or a process, something that allows you to identify mistakes, analyze what went wrong, what were the causes, and register them and make sure that everybody learns from them and has access to that knowledge after that. So we also understood that making mistakes in this huge pandemic, in this strange market, was something that we cannot afford. We can afford making mistakes, but we cannot afford not learning from them. So we strive to make our, let's say, collective learning systems much stronger. And then another thing that we realize as well is that if we are to continue practicing architecture, we have to continue as architects and engineers, and also as let's say digital consultants, right? We need to have more skin in the game, right? For many of our clients actually recognize in us that we were there with them when the things went astray, when the pandemic hit, that we stood with them. We realized that they were having a struggle, and then we told them that if the services we were providing were not bringing value to them, or actually that value was jeopardized by the global turnaround, we were actually going to bear some of those losses with them. That made our credibility rise, and that made our let's say our contribution to their projects much more clear, because we cannot assume remaining like just this typical consultant where no matter what you will always make money. And also we decided to start rejecting interventionism, right? What this means is that if you had come to me 1 year ago asking me or requesting us to do some kind of implementation or technology plan, we would probably say, we would say yes on the outset. We will always be ready to suggest improvements. But we have realized that sometimes the wisest or the smartest move is actually not to do something, it's just to stay quiet and not change certain things, right? And it's like if you go to the dentist, I challenge you to try and go to the dentist and have the dentist say, I'm not going to do anything to you. I'm not going to do any operation to you, right? There was a study here in Spain some months ago, and it said that a completely healthy person went to 20 different dentists in Madrid, and 18 actually proposed something to that person. So there was extreme interventionism, right? Extreme, let's say, movement from the dentist in trying to do fixing a problem that didn't exist. So the same thing applies to us. We just want to try and stop fixing problems that do not exist. That is actually changing a lot our focus in the market and focus on what we can do with companies. And digital transformation is all around, but with this value that we have adopted, we are actually being much more valuable to our clients. And then, of course, my last piece of advice, or the last thing I learned, is that optimism is fuel itself, right? Optimism should not blind your senses, should not blind your capability to understand the changes in your environment. But optimism is extremely important in these uncertain times. It helps going through setbacks. It helps making decisions in hard times. So I would say that being blindly optimistic, it's actually it's dangerous. It will make you, it can actually kill your company. But remaining moderately optimistic is actually something, it's a healthy thing. Transmitting that optimism across your organization, across your practice, and also with your collaborators is very important, because the reality is that if you do the other things I am suggesting here, there is little chance that things will completely wrong for you, right? So that would be my last piece of advice. And I hope we can connect this with the rest of the great interventions, the great contributions, and we will have in the rest of the talk, and also to discuss with you on the chat and later on. So thank you.
Thank you, Roberto, for those few advices, but precious. I want to give the speech to Professor Kass. Yes, Professor Kass, yes, you can share your screen.
I will share my screen.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as promised, I had in my presentation, I had as title, The Chinese Patient. Actually, it's not the patient, the COVID-19 patient I was thinking of, but actually it was a documentary we were seeing at Dutch television in the 80s, and it was about a Chinese patient in a psychiatric hospital. It was a mental patient, and he had a number of points for improvement of the world. And I think it was a stroke of genius. So he said, food must be better. He said, I want clothes of wool, I want transportation by limousine, and I want China to be one big villa park. So of course the Chinese were thinking he was a fool, and that's why he was there. So let's have a look at what he's actually saying and how it would apply to today, to today's problems. So there's a diagnosis, of course, that we have a lot of problems with too much production, too much meat, exhausting, junk food, health problems, etc. There's many things related to food. And one thing I would actually choose as a cure is the idea of scalable food production, ubiquitously, everywhere, at home, at the neighborhood, in the city. And we can have a look at a few ideas and examples how to implement that. So first, at home, you can grow your own seed. And like a refrigerator in your home, a fridge, you can have a box like this. And people already have. So this is coming. This is huge. This is Mr. Al-Khabi in the Global Farm in Qatar. And he's growing food on substrates. This is really the future of growing food, because you can do it everywhere. You can stack it. You can do it in the desert, but you can also do it in the city and even at your home. It's fully scalable and very effective. Little water is needed and very effective in growth. So looking back in the early 80s, we saw this study of NASA, which I think was an amazing study. It looked at a space habitat in space, circling around the world, orbiting the world, and it looked like this from the inside, almost like an inverted Earth surface, curving the other way around, but abundantly growing food, lots of green, individual housing. So actually quite a society to look for and to strive for. We did ourselves a project called City Fruitful, which is the same as a fruitful city. It was a large city, 1,500 people, scheduled to be built in Holland. And it was a full integration. It was 1991, actually, that we did this, so 30 years ago. A full integration of food production, a pedestrian accessibility for the whole city, no cars in the city, car park actually producing CO2, to feed the plants in the structures, and these structures for growing food were both in the home, individual home, collectively, and in the city itself. I developed, for example, this one, a patio housing, courtyard housing, where on the rooftop it was full food production and you had private gardens in your patios. Even like a small house like this could be developed, growing your food at the top and actually enjoying the garden in the lower sections. The second point of this Chinese guy was closes of wool. And of course, he meant that everything that is produced must be improved. It must be better. And the diagnosis of the world today could be, okay, we have this overproduction of almost anything. And at the same time, we have labor exploitation, and we actually have too little for many people. So there's a problem. We could solve this, in my opinion, by the proposed cure here, which is ubiquitous robotic production, scalable production on demand for any industrial product. This can be done at home. Now think of 3D printers, can be done at neighborhood level. Think of CNC machines in workshops nearby. And it can be done on city level, of course. And then I'm really thinking of the building industry that can be improved by parametric design to robotic manufacturing. I show examples. So closest, right now at M7, Misharab, we have this exhibition. Well, I'm not here in Qatar, so I couldn't see it. Maybe you can do it, but it's about waste. And how do we deal with that? This is about what you can do at home with a robot or in your workshop. You can print anything. This is a piece of art. Actually, it's the Maimonian piece by Ilona. This is another approach that would be very useful for the new economy, where it's production on demand. This is a chair we designed that you can make it your own. You can set your own dimensions. Anything can be customized, basically, from materials to finishing to dimensions and to the level of alertness of this chair. So this is one example of the chair where actually quite complex patterns were chosen for the upholstery and the frame. But it's all the same chair, the same procedure. This is a design for a house where the public, the user, can tweak the parameters to actually design their own house. This is done in 2001 already. And we designed also an application for it, a web-based application, to tweak all the variables. And you could see the square meters and also the cost running along with it. And the house would look like this. So to show how this can be done, I show one example of parametric design to robotic production. It starts with a component which has all the complexity in itself, and then it's simply assembling those components to the larger whole to create any shape that you want. I think this is the future of building, larger components, customized, just assembly of the components to create a larger whole. And actually, we already did this. This is exactly how it went for the Liwa Tower we did in Abu Dhabi, for the Balna Budapest, in Budapest, of course, the cultural center. The third thing that the Chinese patient was talking about is transport by limousines. Well, that looked very outrageous at that time, but actually no longer. Of course, we have problems with mobility. The long distances, we have queues, even pedestrian queues, traffic lights, airports. Who wants to wait? No one wants to wait. So artificial intelligence can solve a lot of these things at every scale, at home scale, neighborhood scale, and city level. I'll show a few examples. At the home level, this is an art project again we did with Qatar University students, with Ilona, Jasmin. and John of the Qatar University, where we had robots, AI-driven robots to make art. But of course, you use them for vacuum cleaner. This is on the neighborhood level. You could have electric vehicles like there already are in Qatar, but you could have it more efficient and more comfortable at neighborhood level. And this is to show that actually you can have these different types of transportation together in one system, and it still works as long as it's slow. COVID, for example, has already a very positive effect on the streetscape where we ban the cars and we actually say, okay, it's now for the people. Let the people take over the streets. A student project, Qatar University, where we were thinking of electric vehicles connecting all the habitats in the desert. So there are no roads, nothing, there are still deserts. So it's very context-aware housing project could look like this. And then of course have food productions embedded in it. On the larger scale, the city scale, we can think of these kind of mobile rooms. I mean, it's not a car, it can go any direction. You step in and you work, or you use it as a lounge or as a meeting room. And I think this is the future of transportation in cities. So no longer this, no longer highways in the city, not necessary when we have AI. And I think it's the near future, actually. I think within 10 years, we will see it. And then streets can look like this. You can walk, you can have smaller electric vehicles, etc. And it already looks like this in Qatar, if you are in the right place, and this beautiful park in front of the Sheraton. The fourth point, which is the most controversial maybe, is China one big villa park. Okay, how do we look at that today? There is a big inequality between rich and poor. Some people have everything and some people have almost nothing to live in. So I think this can be changed in some ways. Of course, it's a societal issue. And it also has to do with the land, the scarcity of land, etc., how it's divided and distributed. So the cure I was thinking of is another form of being ubiquitous. We should have land ownership, land owned by everyone, basically. Of course, in the Middle East, you have this birthright for citizens to own a piece of land, but this could be adopted by countries in Europe as well. I think it's a very good idea. But then in Europe, we have a different idea of how we build houses. And I think your house scale and the neighborhood scale, the city level, we can see different developments that are all interesting and all are going to happen. On the smaller scale, build your own house. We have the Wiki House. Here we see the combination of technologies, of the robotic production, parametric design, and build your own house. This is Holland. Well, that's evident. No, this is Holland, cows, green. And what we see happening in Holland, actually, that we want to have houses, homes that have a larger plot. Having a larger plot means that you can grow your own food. It also means that it's much less traffic in front of your house, actually, and you can use electric cars again for anything. Also for home delivery. And that's another thing that I forgot to mention at the transportation section. Home delivery, I think, is a big solution for traffic problems because it's much more efficient than going to the shops yourself. This is the winter camp in Qatar, as they know it. So the desert feeling, you want to have that desert feeling, no, when you have a house. So if the desert is divided into plots that are large enough to have a house, a simple house maybe, and a house that is actually protecting you from the desert at the same time, but is the desert also at the same token. It could look like this, the Radwani house in Musharraf, with the courtyard. It might look like this, where you have a much more free-form shaped wall. And actually, the house is the wall. Huh? The house is embedded in the wall. This would solve a lot of problems of today's structures in Qatar, where you see two large houses on two small plots, actually. So when the plots are bigger and the rules would change a bit, that you could actually also use the wall instead of just as a fence, but as the wall of your house, it would be much more efficient, and you would have much more space to use in the interior part of your plot. And you could use that for gardening, etc. Of course, I think that would be a big improvement if we would have a look at those new typologies for housing. And it can happen in the city as well. You can stack it, you can stack villas, so each cube represents a house, and you can have it on different levels and play with it. This is the IKEA in Vienna. It's actually in the planning stage, but it looks marvelous, I think. That you have a lot of greenery, you have this framework, and imagine it could be houses, homes, where the gardens, for anything, food production or just for pleasure, are just as big as your house. And to end this lecture, the slides I have chosen are seemingly a different story, but actually it's also related to the future of the economy, because I was thinking the economy is not only looking at yourself, at your own house, do it by yourself, but it's also very networked in a neighborhood and in the cities, and cities are networked among each other, and cities will also adopt a new strategy for economy. And I think public art is one of those strategies that will be adopted, and larger structures might come about, actually to address the public and to have the public participate in interaction. And one of the most exquisite examples of this, I think, is the East-West, West-East installation by Richard Serra, which is a sublime combination of actually the concrete and the abstract. I like this a lot. So in conclusion, if we combine these strategies, and if they are ubiquitous, these strategies, and if we combine scalable food production with customization of projects or any other combination, I think we can make big steps. You should not focus on one alone. I think you should focus on new combinations of available technologies, which then actually becomes an innovation. So I think the Chinese patient, he was a visionary, and we could actually see our current society as the patient instead and start doing something about it. Thank you for so far. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Professor. It was very interesting. And now let me call Randa. Randa, the floor is yours.
Hi, guys. Hi. So I suppose I should start by saying thanks to Umayma and the Art Hub community for giving me the opportunity to join you guys today. I think I'm the unicorn here in this group because I am not an architect. I hope I'm not going to be far too disruptive. So in keeping with this ever so present topic that you guys are discussing today, I'm going to share with you some lessons learned from our business, which is the water industry here in the UK. So it is looking at 2020, how we navigated COVID-19 and the lessons learned moving forward into 2021. So I think I want to start by highlighting that we are still watching, learning, and trying different things. Some of what we have observed during our pursuit for business continuity is what I'm going to share with you today, because I think what we've been trying to do is survive as a business, which is what everybody's been trying to do. So among some of the lucky businesses in the UK, I think is our business, because we are seen as critical to UK infrastructure. And hence our projects were permitted to carry on, to proceed. So one of the first steps that our business did at the beginning of COVID-19 is starting to reaffirm or reestablish what our key business priorities are. So we've identified 5, and that is keeping our people safe and ensuring their well-being, keeping our resources as low as possible to ensure business continuity, keeping our people gainfully employed, delivering projects to time, cost, and quality, and liaising closely with our key supply chain and our customers. So we've had to rejig our priorities slightly. So I think by now, everybody agrees that COVID-19 was a wake-up call, and it almost heightened our senses. So in this short kind of, conversation, I'd like to try to demonstrate the lessons learned using the 5 human senses. I guess I'm trying to be a little bit creative considering the community. I'm going to split the senses right in the middle. So what we can't do versus what we can do. And what we can't do, I split into touch, taste, and smell. And essentially, it is what COVID-19 took away from us, and every experience that is physical or in person. So specifically to my construction world and the water industry, it took away, obviously, from us the ability to work in the office. There were no interactions in person, no meetings, no gatherings, no company briefings, no conferences, no group trainings. And those were very much part of our everyday business. And they were the opportunities where we got together as a business and listened to strategy from our leaders, because the way we are scattered here is our company would be or is in the north of England. There are people who gather from projects all around the country. We would meet at a location. And we do work in joint ventures. So it was always an opportunity to regroup and really understand what the key business, strategic vision is, meeting our colleagues and so on. The other thing that COVID took away then is the excessive travel across borders, across continents, because we had a partner company, or we were with an American partner company. It took away the mileage, commuting from home. We relied a lot on workforce that is able to travel and live away from home during the week. And we also realized that the large volumes of equipment around our workstations in the office were taken away. With it as well, it took away complex procedures and policies that had to obviously be put in place to navigate all of the large needs and people, people footprint and so on. And then it took away a lot of the documentation we relied on. And I think, knowing the design and construction world, you could just about imagine the amount of programs we print, the drawings we print, the plans and strategies and policies that we print, all of the various documentation. So in navigating all of that with all of these sources that we had available to us, the one common theme had always been, well, how do we communicate better? We always talked about that, So I'll leave that thought for a moment, and then I'll focus on the can do. So COVID left us with the see and hear senses. So we found ourselves able to innovate using various IT skills to ensure that our messages and workflow processes are streamlined. We made sure that our messages are made simpler so that they're easily absorbed and can be cascaded upwards or downwards quite easily. We took more care and attention, and we placed getting to know each other. We placed a lot of focus on getting to know each other and know each other on networks of teams. It no longer became the smaller teams, but rather networks of teams. So stepping outside of the silos that may have existed before. So you may have noticed that people have become more conscious and make an effort to stop and allow their teammate the opportunity to comment on something that they've said. So we try to be a bit more concise in our dialogues to allow the other person to have their say. Some of our relationships we felt have become richer. So we started to see that the people we work with have more sort of complex sides to them, because each one of us disarmored almost, and we allowed the cameras in our home. So we take meetings with the cameras on, the dog might be jumping up and down, the wife or husband may be running in the back, the children. And all of a sudden, we started to understand that there is so much more in common that we have with each other than we first realized. And so it can be looked upon in both ways. And I'll come to that in a moment. So whereas we've become more tolerant because we really needed to be able to communicate with each other virtually. But in a way, we could also have transactional relationships. So the conversations don't always have to be deep and emotional, about a particular issue, but they can be transactional. It can be, look, I don't have a lot of time, I need X, Y, Z. And we've become tolerant in accepting those types of communications, those interactions with each other. And I guess some people may wonder whether we've COVID-19 or the virtual interactions allowed us to the prejudices to be taken away, or the pre-consumptions or pre-assumptions about a particular person. That's a question, I guess, for people to think about. So we also realize that now that we are not spending a lot of money on real estate, mileage, travel, etc., that as a company, we started to spend less money because we don't have to keep the light on. We don't have to make sure people are safe. We don't have to make sure we have the coffees, the teas, so on, the equipment. And the mileage bill was quite eye-watering when you looked at it. So we started saving money from that perspective. And as a team, we started to see that actually people individually have become more efficient and effective. So for example, in some cases, we realize we're focusing on making decisions quickly. And I guess that comes from being focused on decision making, because there is no other time to do anything else than just reach a quick decision and a reliable decision. Some people may wonder, is it the right decision? Is the quality of the decision impacted? But I guess we will have to see the impact of the decisions we've made in this year further on, 6 to 12 months from now. So in summary, this segment, the can do, I guess it could be suggested that our communication has become better whilst we're using much less resources than we had pre-COVID. Moving forward to 2021, if you recall earlier, I said that we're still learning and we're still watching. What we know so far is this: a lot of our colleagues are no longer interested in moving away from home. They're more interested in either working within the locality or vicinity of where they live, or they want to be able to create a space within their home that is multifunctional, professional, obviously, spaces, as well as it's a comfortable home. So we've got people even converting their attics into a nice office space or basement, etc. We're building social distancing into our budgets, and the supply chain is obviously doing the exact same thing. That is going to be the impact of which felt by the client. So they have to fork the bill, and the bill is going to be higher, naturally. So we realized that we're going to have to start going above and beyond in building and similar strong relationships and personable relationships with our clients and stakeholders, and really understand along the journey with us, including the end user, because sometimes our client in the water industry, certainly we have a client who engages us to deliver a particular piece of work, but the end user is actually the customer who opens the tap to drink clean water from that tap. So really understanding and being clever in understanding those relationships and working on them and taking them along the journey with us. Where we have the traditional construction worker who is not, you know, and maybe this is a stereotype, but in our world, they're generally interested in what they can do with their hand. They're not, you know, au fait with the IT equipment, but now they're becoming really good with software, and they're finding that they can pick things up very quickly, whereas before they didn't feel so confident with the IT piece. We think that in 2021, what we have to watch out for is sometimes some relationships or new business relationships may be difficult if you haven't seen the person. You know, or don't know how to be around them. And obviously, depending on what culture, you know, some people and some cultures find it easy to engage, you know, in sort of a conversation with a new person or a professional relationship, etc. But, you know, a little bit of care and attention have to, you know, be looked at, you know, and taken in terms of England, building those new relationships and how that works. We think that a way of working around that is, and from the feedback we get from people, although everybody's happy to have that, you know, have work, you know, kind of fit in within their life and social life, and you know, finding that work-life balance, you know, suits them. They do still want and have the need to go into the office once, twice, or, you know, a week to be able to meet and mingle with their colleagues. So we see very clearly that in 2021, we have to create an environment where people can safely social distance and have both, you know, flexibility of being in an office space or being in the site with all of their other colleagues in the team, and then obviously have that opportunity to choose to work from home whenever they want to. The last 2 points I'm going to mention on there is we will also need to invest in reliable, you know, and rely on more accessible technology. So, you know, we are using some tools at the moment, but I think we're just using them because it's what's out there in the market. But we will in the future need to really understand what we're using and be able to, you know, find technology that is easy, accessible, you know, and has all the relevant sort of you know, frills, I suppose, or security that we need for our type of business, without too much complication. And the last thing is, whereas I mentioned earlier that people interested or love the work-life balance, but we also need to consider that very, very carefully. What that work-life balance, what are the various needs around that? I'm going to just close by saying that it seems like COVID-19 has simply accelerated that movement of people to a low carbon economy. There is more of a distributed work force, so people are staying locally, and you'll find things like power stations, for example, are more in the countryside than they are in central London. You know, we're using less cars. You know, clearly there is an impact from that perspective. On the other hand, I suppose if we use the Great Fire of London as an example, it allowed the city of London to be reborn from a medieval city into what you see now. The redevelopment set the foundation of the existing city of London. So perhaps, and we wonder whether COVID-19 will have a similar watershed moment for the whole of mankind. Who knows? What we think and know is that from a delivery perspective, we are sitting or we are on our toes, watching and waiting for to see how the design communities around the globe are going to translate the social impact of COVID-19 as the 21st century sort of progresses. So this is my piece. There are no huge conclusions because I remind you again, we are watching, we're learning, we're trying different things. 2020 hasn't allowed us the chance to be innovative in terms of technology, in terms of design. All we focused on is how do we survive? How do we ensure our people are safe? And how do we ensure that our businesses are viable? So the focus naturally has been around people. So we put people right at the heart of our business. So thanks very much, guys. And I'll hope to, engage in the questions afterwards. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Randa. I enjoyed your way of approaching the COVID in a social way. So I will give the speech to Lubna.
Thank you.
Hi, Hi, everyone. Thank you, Umayma. Thank you, the Architects Hub, and all the speakers. Some very interesting points. Randa stole some of my key points I was going to talk about, so I'll find some new ones. Just to start with, I mean, you can all imagine that being in an industry that is the events, which works completely against everything that COVID has stopped. Putting people together face to face, touching, getting to know each other. So COVID literally just put the whole industry of events into a standstill where everybody froze because we didn't know how to handle it. And then everybody realized that we do have technology. So technology has saved us to a certain extent. Exactly like this, with Zoom, with webinars, with everything else. My personal lessons from this whole, a little bit of a disaster over here, but there's some silver linings, is to never take anything for granted, on a personal level and on a business level. One day we were working on putting 2 exhibitions together, and then the next day we were told, nothing is happening in Qatar. So, and on a personal level, I think we've all had great lessons. I mean, I've spent 5 months not seeing anybody by myself between 4 walls. And there were some great lessons there, especially in the way that we're a lot more able to deal with certain situations than we think we are. On another level, I think from a work point of view, we realized that we had a lot more disaster preparedness than we realized because we work with our laptops and we were able to just pick up everything from the office and go home. So we were able to carry on. And what I've noticed with our colleagues is the fact that we were seeing everybody's homes, there was a lot more of the human side that was coming out of our interactions than what we saw before, where everybody would put a suit on and turn up and have this work persona, as we say. And then we saw the human side of everyone. As far as the events industry, we had to look at what we were doing as a community, because we had a community that got together every year in the forms of an event. But we had to bring the community together, a community that we know, for everybody that knows what happened in Qatar, is on the construction side, a lot of factories were closed. And on another side, the sites were going on. So we had 2 sides of the stories where we basically found a way of bringing the community together through webinars. And education is something that we saw was absolutely critical in the events that we were putting together. And by doing these webinars, we realized that actually we were attracting people from Qatar, but we at one point, we had every single continent that was represented in one of the webinars. And it just clearly demonstrated the fact that we needed to innovate very quickly to still stay relevant, where a lot of people just stopped everything as far as events are concerned. So when I see events in the future, and I'll talk about the day that they announced the vaccine, and then the Zoom shares just plummeted down. And I looked at it and I laughed, because I realized that within a few minutes, everybody would be back on a Zoom call, because a vaccine is not going to allow us to have the interaction that we were used to, be it in the office, social, even families getting together. And we would still rely on the technology in order to have that human interaction. So I just want to share with you, can I share the image that I gave, Slim? Oh, when you have time, I'll talk about it if you show it. As far as the events are concerned, sorry?
You can share your screen, Lubnal, you can.
Okay. This is, can you see it? Sorry. Here we go. This is actually not an event, but this is how I see the events taking place in the future. This is a picture that was taken in Bangkok in one of the malls, but these are all people who are waiting for orders. And I liked it because of the architectural lines of it, but it clearly demonstrates how we're going to have to be social distancing at events. So my take on it is that it's going to take a lot more consideration from the organizers, from the participants, from, let's say, exhibitors, if you are in an exhibition, because you have to do the testing, you have to look at the social distancing part, and how can you accommodate as many people as possible, as well as allow people to interact face-to-face safely. As far as 2021 is concerned, I think it's going to take a while before we go back to face-to-face, in Qatar anyway, on an international level. So I think for the near future, the events that are going to take place are going to be more local events, taking into consideration that for companies, let's say if you're in the UK, by the time you come here, do a week of quarantine, and then the test, and then do the event, and then go back, do the quarantine. There is a lot of investment, not only on a personal level for the, for the employee attending the event, but also on companies level. So depending on how the rules and regulations are changed in Qatar as of the 1st of January, I think it's going to take time for the international community to be back at events here. Although we can see that GITEX is happening this week in Dubai and is still well attended, I don't think that the international community is as represented as before. And as far as I think for your community of architects and interior designers, the emphasis is really on developing a community of your clients, of your suppliers, and delivering some content for them, showcasing the know-how and your experience and your expertise to deliver something that would be out of the norm, but would keep you connected to the industry and to your clients and to your suppliers. I mean, you already have something like the Architect Hub, which connects everyone, but I think the companies need to look at maybe a hybrid of events, of maybe doing a digital festival where you can showcase your creations, but keep you connected to the wider industry. I mean, I've attended digital festivals, I've attended webinars, I've run webinars. There's a hybrid event where there are certain sessions that happen face-to-face, and a small number of sessions happening face-to-face. And then the rest of the sessions are happening digitally. So I think this is still a space to wait and see what's going to happen, because it really depends on the Ministry of Health and how they regulate our sector of events, which is unheard of, that we have a health sector dictating how an industry works. And seeing what happened at the perfume exhibition last week, where it was shut down because social distancing and the mask wearing was not enforced, then I think everybody needs to be quite careful of the well-being of not only the organizer, the participants, and also the venues where this takes place. So I think we just have to be very flexible as we go along. And this is exactly what we had to do during 2021. And I think we just have to carry on. I think this is the way of us, like Roberto said, we cannot plan everything, because the big element of it needs to be expecting the unexpected. I think that's the summary for me for 2021 and 2020 and 2021. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you a lot. Thank you, Lubna. Thanks to all the participants today. I'm just open the floor if anyone wants to interact with any one of the speakers today.
Thank you, Umayma. I just saw your comment.
Yes, amazing. Loving it. I just don't know where to start. Somebody help me with this.
Can I ask a question to everyone, since I just spoke? I'd be really interested to know what would be your expectation for yourselves as individuals, as well as your companies, as far as events are concerned for next year. What would you like to see?
Wow.
I like to see like a touch of normality, like trying to keep things normal. I was lucky to be in an event here in Madrid, well, it was in Barcelona actually, and the event was amazing. I mean, everybody that went there with all the safety measures and everything worked really well. Everybody was really, really, really eager to participate in the event. I mean, the event was much smaller than what it would have been in a normal environment, but the outcome for us was great. The level of the people that were actually there was amazing. So I do think events will be less crowded, probably, yes, but the quality will be much better. I mean, for those of us seeking to transmit, to convey, or to do business in the events.
Yes, that is actually correct, because the event we had yesterday, even though small, can you hear me? Am I clear? Even though very small, there were only about 4 consultants for the consultancy day. And the comment we got was, it's small and we all know each other. So everybody got a good, the quality was very good. Yes, indeed. And they would be much smaller. Now the question would be the cost to everybody, and who's willing to pay to see a few people. Because the complaint from some was, well, not many people came, but of course, it's social distancing. But you see, it's a bit of a dilemma here. But again, the word normal changes. What used to be normal before COVID, there's going to be a new normal. That would be the normal then. So yes.
I do think that the events, the small events, will carry on for a while before we can see the very large ones, especially if they take place in hotels or, in Qatar, for example, they cannot allow more than 30 people in one room.
Yeah.
That's the.
Yeah, but you know what?
But
one small thing, because people have gotten so tired of these restrictions, they just don't do them anymore. So sometimes you walk in and have to, where is your ihtiraz? You ask them, where is your app? And where's the guy who stops us? We ask, can you stop us and take our temperature and see our app? They started not doing that. So people are just trying to turn a blind eye, because it's become too just painful to just always be on guard. They want to go back to normal, and that is detrimental in my opinion. So events, yeah, a bit of a challenge here, but we see how it goes. 2021 is around the corner. I had a question for Professor Cass, though. Can you define ubiquitous in terms of what do you mean exactly by that? Is it something like the idea Roberto had for the all option home? Or if you could just define that for us, thanks.
Ubiquitous, well, it means that it's basically everywhere. Well, like universal. I mean, the developments I have been sketching out are among us. No, they're everywhere. But I think we can use this time, especially this time, to look for new opportunities to actually activate some of these issues more, be more focused on it, and start some sort of new economy. There's a new economy in the making, and I think you can call it the long tail of economy. I think it's called like that. That actually it's comprised of many, many, many small activities rather than one big one. So if you have all these smaller activities together, and that is, I focused on the food, on the production and mobility and housing, but you can also focus on energy, of course. There are many more things that the Chinese patient didn't mention. And I think it's a good opportunity now to recombine many of those loose pieces. And I think they are ubiquitous, all of them individually, but they have not been combined yet into a larger strategy. And I think we are now slowly coming into a new kind of economy, and we could actually keep hold of that after we got our vaccines and don't go back to normal, but really work on that new kind of economy that is much more participatory, which is not top-down imposed on the people, but it's more bottom-up processes because it's closer to the people. So what I've been hearing of all of you, that actually people are being brought closer together by COVID-19 in a very strange way, in an abstract way, not in a physical way. And we can use, I think, that momentum to work more together, to collaborate more cross-disciplinary, more participatory. And as an architect or as a designer, you can develop systems for that. So it's really systemic thinking also, to have another systemic base for the new economy, which is, I think, ubiquitous in that sense that it's everywhere in every niche of society.
Thank you. That's pretty amazing.
But will it work? That's the question. Are we ready for it?
Yes, the thing is, you mentioned the vaccination, and the thing is, well, I realized that we are dealing with so many unknowns that decision-making becomes a challenge. This was mentioned, I think, in this presentation today, because even the vaccines, how reliable are they? Will they do anything? Will COVID stay here for another 2, 3, 4 years, regardless? Or so it's.
I think COVID will stay, and new viruses will come, also. So don't worry about that. There's more to come, and of course, there's no new normal. The distancing, I think, can be managed very well using AI, and it can be very social in a way. But it's a different form of coming together, and it's probably less touching, or maybe even more intimate in another way, and less as a group, as massive physical manifestations. So personally, I'm actually quite optimistic, like Robert was, and I think all of you are sort of optimistic about the new possibilities it actually gives us.
Yeah.
I wanted to reflect on, when we take the events space, for instance, we have Lubna here to talk about that. I think I would take for granted that the events are going to remain hybrid for probably the rest of our professional career. Of course, I would like to have the events go back to where they were 1 year ago, but hybrid events have many advantages. Teaching in a liquid environment also has so many advantages. And I think if we can see the opportunity in this, there's a lot of things we can do. There's a lot of things for us to strive, to learn. And for instance, I'll give my personal experience. I used to teach a couple of weeks workshop, a 2 weeks workshop at the university on designing stadiums. And that used to be a face-to-face workshop where we would spend hours and hours with the students in the class. This year, we had to go to a liquid learning mode where we would have students in the room and students from home. And home means we had students from Bolivia, from Germany, from the UK, from Kuwait, all working together, right? So it actually involved completely changing the way we approach the course, recording many things and sharing that with the students beforehand. But it also brought many opportunities. I mean, it was more democratic in the sense that you could attend everyone in the right manner. Everything that was learned by the class could be recorded and accessed later on. And I felt that this was not just an accident. This was actually going to stay with us, even if we could have the classes back to being normal, like 1 year ago. So I think we should just assume that other viruses will come. This is going to repeat itself sooner than we think. So the best for us, I'd say, is actually not having to plan for a new breakthrough or a new event like this, but just work in a way that it doesn't matter if something like this happens again. And if you think that way, actually thinking becomes much easier. Planning becomes much easier, and you can take for granted things. You can start taking for granted things about tomorrow. You not worrying so much.
Roberto, that's a very good point. I forgot to mention that, that aspect of it was really tough for us as an industry to see the exhibition centers that used to hold face-to-face meetings turned into, field hospitals. So I do agree with you that the emergence of digital events has allowed the globalization of those events. So somebody who would not be able to attend an event in Qatar could just log on to a webinar and hear about what's going on here and connect to the community, whatever industry it is, from anywhere in the world. And at the same time, I have to say that I strongly believe in the face-to-face, and there's going to be a re-emergence of events, although there's going to be different. But I do think that it's going to still stay a hybrid of face-to-face and digital, because everybody has appreciated the globalization access to information. But the humans need that interaction. And at one point or another, I was quite happy to start seeing people after 5 months, Roberto, I'll tell you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm sure you will make it much more relevant than it was before, no?
Yeah.
I mean, the time we spend doing face-to-face is going to be, at least for a while, is going to be much more relevant than it used to be, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think one thing this year has taught us is that our ability to predict the future is really, really bad. I mean, we are really, really bad in predicting what's going to happen, in estimating. We tend to be over-optimistic, and we tend not to see like the risks of very little things that can turn and become huge, right? So that would be another takeaway for me. It's like I don't know what's going to be of the future, but I know that any prediction needs to be taken like very carefully. It's we're really bad at predicting the future.
I suppose I could say, if I can jump in on Roberto's comment there, I guess we are and we're not, because I was really surprised to see this, I don't know, like a cover on an Italian magazine where they've got individual people in these little cars with like it looked like a capsule. And I think it was a 1920 magazine or something like that, certainly at the beginning of the last century. And I thought, well, that's really interesting how they foresaw that could happen. So I wonder whether it's our differentiation of what is possibly what is us dreaming something, a scenario that will or may not happen. Is this the probability, the likelihood of something, and we almost go through a process of disregarding what may happen, as opposed to, oh, you know, you're just being a dreamer, you know. And I don't know whether we have to start really considering the possibilities, or I don't know how to you know, encapsulate it or frame it. But it's almost like we sort of disregard some things as, no, never gonna happen. That will never happen. And whether we really need to start considering what could be now a little bit more.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Can I ask a question to some of you in, do you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
For example, our experience here in Hungary is that we might be more confined to the house, but actually we go out every day. We walk in a park, in the weekends we have long hikes in the mountains. You can do the same in the desert, can you? You can go out. And you can go to museums, can you?
Can we, Lubnal?
I think you can, but why don't you do it then?
So the desert walking, it depends on the temperature, right, Professor?
It's perfect now, it's winter.
So
but
people were still going to the beach and people were still doing many things.
So you see people.
Yeah, but now in Doha, I mean, during the height of COVID, nobody was seeing anybody apart from at the supermarket.
But why don't you call friends and you go to the beach together? Can you do that?
During the height of it, we couldn't. Some people were doing it, but they were breaking the law because the beaches were closed. Okay. But now everything is back open, but people are still very careful, because what we fail to forget is that some people are high risk. We don't have a sign to say I'm high risk, right? So people are just being careful depending on their risk aversity to this, to COVID. Yeah. You know, weddings have got a certain limit. People have got a certain limit on how many people they can have as a gathering in a hotel. So there are still restrictions, although I think we are very lucky compared to, you know, my friends in the UK and my family in the US, who are still, a lot of them are still confined. I do agree that we have a lot more liberty in Qatar than in other places.
So I guess maybe I can talk for myself. At the moment I'm living in London, and they created this tier system. So we're okay to go where we want. I'm apprehensive. You know, London being such a, you know, mega city, I'm apprehensive of crowds. And if you see pictures which came up, Christmas shopping in you know, the center of the city, it was absolutely scary for me. And I know from speaking to, you know, a lot of my family and friends, and certainly I have elderly parents, so I think there is a personal angst with some of us around going out and just living life as normal. But we have also at the same time a frustration, and we talk about it. You know, I was talking to my sister yesterday, and she was saying, I'm honestly sick and tired of being, you know, kind of confined to a space, not going out, not going on holiday. And we almost want to just snap into that. And I do wonder, and I guess it was a question I was going to ask you as the, you know, architectural and design community. What do you see? Because in my mind, you will shape our, you know, living, and you'll shape our space, outdoor and indoor, in the coming years. I won't put you under so much pressure to say what are your solutions for us next year, but certainly in the next couple of years. But our list is long, because we want to have the flexibility of working from home, and, you know, having the space where we can have a professional interaction, the private interaction. We want to be able to go to the office, and in all of that, we want to be safe. We want to have our privacy, our comfort, and so on and so on and so forth. Is it the case that cities essentially will move from, like, for example, taking London again, London is important for the UK economy because you drive millions of people into the city. There is the theater, the music, festivals, the shopping. Are we going to create smaller hubs, and so create micro cities and economies now? And it's essentially, is it going to be equally spread out, which is what people have been crying for? Why isn't the north of England given as much funding and focus in developing all of the social and business aspects of it to create a vibrant economy? Are we moving from focusing on one hub to spreading people out and hence managing smaller groups of people, but giving us that gives us the security, but you give us also everything we need to live our lives as normal?
Well,
question mixed with a comment.
well, I can give you
Good
my
one. I'll let
comment,
Professor
but
Cass tell you, yes.
Roberto can do from his side.
Guys, please, hello. I think we still have 5 minutes to go because we are running out of time. So
okay, then
we want just to wrap up.
Just 1 minute then.
Yes,
I
please.
think
1 minute for each one.
The secret, the key to future societies is really networking. Small networks, very extensive networks, smaller hubs, many smaller hubs, no massive festive stations anymore, but many more smaller ones, which are more intimate and more rewarding, I think, in the end for social interaction. So I'm very optimistic about that. And I think AI especially is very useful for this, how we can actually recognize what is safe and what's not safe. And we shouldn't be afraid of that, actually, to let that know to other people what is our status. I'm fully pro using applications actually to inform each other. And that's also a form of new form of communication. I think that can become ubiquitous again and can help us a lot to actually improve social interaction.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll just wrap up with my thought is the need from social as well as corporate, if we say, this need of creating mini communities is going to emerge more and more and more as we face to the way the pandemic is changing our ways of life. So be it living in London, where then your community can be your borough, or even, part of your borough, and us in Qatar, where, we created our little communities through our friends, and because we feel safe with knowing how they lead their lives, so we're happy to meet them. And as far as in the different industries, there is a need to create these communities that are going to support each other without the face-to-face aspect taking place as much as before. So I think that's how I see the world moving forward.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, on my side, I'd say that we should stay vigilant and alert of the innovations that come to our sector, but probably we have to keep eyes in our back, because probably we might expect those innovations to come from one side but then realize that they are actually being implemented elsewhere, right? I was thinking about the modular construction and the pre-assembly construction that Professor Cass showed in his slides. And I'm thinking, okay, you don't need, this is already happening in low-end buildings, in low-profile buildings, industrial buildings. This kind of modularity, off-site construction is being with us for years now. Probably now we realize the potential. We can see that being applied in many other areas. Of course, you don't need a high-profile building to do that. So, and my final tip would be just try to shape yourself, shape your practice and even your family in a way that you don't need to plan, right? That whatever comes, you will adapt. Whatever comes, you will keep your chances, your options open. And that is, I was joking with this about this with Amima before, but not to have a plan requires careful planning. So you have to be very careful about.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I can't say thank you enough to everybody. This has been so Don't think I'll sleep tonight. There's such a lot of ideas, and we could go on and talking for ages. I just really wish we had that cup of coffee in front of us and we could actually talk face to face again, because digital has become a bit of a it's like you do it all the time. You're carrying your phone and your things with you all the time, and you're just on the speaker and on the video anytime. It's pretty interesting how things are going to turn out. Now, thank you all for sharing. This is really marvelous. It's a privilege for us. Over to you, Slim.
We are arriving to the end. It was a great discussion. It was the best way to end this, let's say, fruitful season, because we got many interesting talks. This one is one of them. We will meet for sure in the next year in 2021. Hope to see you all face to face. Thanks again, Lubna. Thanks, Professor Kass. Thanks, Randa. Thanks, Roberto. Thanks to all the attendees. And I hope you enjoyed the talk. And I hope for everyone a great night. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Okay.
Ciao.